Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to another edition of Sunday School. Hope everybody had a great holiday with family. Glad you guys are back with us because we consider you guys to be family. On Sunday School, a little bit off this week because we got the bowl game coming up, and it's in the middle of the week, throws off the schedule a little bit. And, of course, we had the holidays. So I want to start talking about this Texas-Michigan matchup. And with the known factors, right? Because there are a lot of unknowns, a lot of things that are uncertain about this matchup on both sides. I want to get into some of the known commodities, some of the known assets for both sides, and how that could play into the game plan and strategy for both sides. We'll get into that. But thank you to our friends over at Advanced Pain Care for sponsoring Sunday School. We'll talk about them and give you a message from them coming up a little bit later on in this program. Let's start out with the Texas offense versus that Michigan defense, and something we know. And even there's familiarity because you did play Michigan a couple of years ago. And actually, I kind of wanted to start there because the big news for Michigan is, they're going to be missing basically their two best edge defenders. 14 of their 28 sacks are opting out of this Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. And of course, the all Big Ten selection Moore, who plays the edge for them. He's fantastic. Derek Moore is going to be out. And then the outside linebacker / edge, you look at Pro Football Focus, Jayshon Barham, he plays on the edge as much as he plays any position on the defensive line. So you can pretty much say that's their two best edge defenders. If you're Texas, you would like to exploit that vulnerability, right? You'd like to attack the outside, attack the edges. Think about that 2024 game plan for Texas with Quinn Ewers. What did you do? You were trying to avoid the D tackles, right? They had the best D tackle combo in college football at the time. So your offensive game plan was built around attacking the edges, which for Texas, especially in the run game, does come really natural because you're an outside zone team. Naturally, that's your most prolific concept, most frequently won concept is the outside zone. So you do naturally attack the edges and attack the perimeter that way. But remember versus Michigan, a lot of quick throws in 2024 for Quinn Ewers, a lot of those quick swing screens. Remember Jaden Blue getting involved in the passing game to really stress that defense horizontally, stay away from the guts of that defense, which was the interior, which was kind of the Rock of Gibraltar with those two D tackles they had there, and it worked out really well for Texas. And they kind of forced that Michigan defense to chase them horizontally, and then they were able to pop some big runs. They even moved the pocket a little bit with Quinn Ewers in that game to once again stress, to move away from their strength, which was the interior. I'm not saying this is the same Michigan defense and that's the same strength, but now you're trying to attack a specific weakness, which is going to be them without their best edge defenders. I wonder if you'll kind of dig up that old 2024 game plan for Arch, because it does apply here. You can move the pocket really well with them. The quick short passing game. Remember all the quick screens and quick passes with the RPO game, but they were perimeter screens with Ryan Wingo late in the season. You can throw a lot of those out there. You can find really creative ways to attack the edges. Remember, they didn't run the ball. The thing about Michigan is they stop the run really well, and they run they're top 15 basically rush defense and running the football. I think they allow a little over 100 rushing yards per game, and they average like 213 rushing yards per game. That's their identity. All right. They run the rock and they stop the run. For Texas, though, you haven't been able to run the ball effectively all season long. So their strength, which is them stopping the run, and obviously they may not be as effective without those two kind of, obviously force enforcers on the edge, but they're going to have a lot of their guys. Their two lean tacklers are going to be available in that game for them. The interior of that D line is going to be available for them. That most of that secondary is playing in the game, so they're still going to bring back a lot of that defense to play in this bowl game. And even though, there's still some uncertainty, it could end up, I know Biff said, hey, I don't know, but right now there's been no report that there have been a lot more opt-outs, and we are in bowl practices. But we shall see. Things can still happen. But that's a really good rush defense, so you want to stay away from their strength. And I think Sark did a good job of that in the 2024 game plan. And this season, your running game has been lackluster. Right, that's why you're rebuilding the entire run game in the offseason. Your two leading running backs are going to be opting out of this game. You're rebuilding the offensive line. But I think For Texas, that also is, I think right now for Texas could be the strategy is to start out by attacking the edges, the backup edge defenders they'll have there. And something else I want to bring up that Sark knows about because he coached against Wink Martindale in that 2024 matchup. He likes to blitz, right? You go look at blitz rate, and right now Michigan top 5 in blitz rate in the country in the FBS. I mean, they like to blitz. Wink Martindale was famous for how enthusiastically he called blitzes in the NFL. He was always among the league leaders in blitz rates whenever he was calling plays in the league. So everybody knew that would translate to college football. And for him, that's just part of his DNA. And you know that. And that's why Sark, there are lots of blitz beaters conceptually that you have to bake into the game plan. You go think about, that game, you had a lot of Michigan game, a lot of quick passes. We talked about the swing screens, a lot of quick passes, move the pocket as well. But the screen game is big. I looked at the 2 games this season where Texas played a team that was really high among the national leaders in blitz rate. Oklahoma is a great example, right? You had Oklahoma's one of the highest in terms of the blitz rate. They're one of the college football's leaders in blitz rates. Also, Vanderbilt was also among national leaders in blitz rate. In both of those teams above 40% in blitz rate. In those games, you had combined 20 screens you called in those games. The average time to throw for Arch, 2.7, 2.5 seconds. Ball out quick. A lot of this due to the screen passes, but I think that's got to be something you naturally do well. Now, you have to have variety in that screen game because your running back room is a little bit depleted. So you can use some of those youngsters, but you may not have the timing with those guys because they don't have the reps. But you got a lot of production out of the wide receiver screens late in the season, even the tight end screen game because Jack Andrews will be available. That's something you consider too, especially with them being a little bit vulnerable on the edges. So that's something also keep in mind. The screen game can be a great way to neutralize the blitz and pop off some really big plays. Something that concerns me about the blitz is we're talking about how blitz happy Michigan is and how blitz happy Wink Martindale is. I don't think he's going to change that just, for this game, maybe breaks tendency, but I think you'll still see a relatively high blitz rate. Your running backs in pass pro. This is why I think Wink Martindale will blitz more. You lost your 2 best, or at least your 2 most experienced running backs in pass protection in Trey Wisner and in CJ Baxter. And a big part of your pass pro overall is, hey, the running back has to be able to pick up his man in pass pro. So if you're blitzing, a lot of times that quarterback's going to be responsible for that extra guy, or the running back's going to end up responsible for that extra guy. And that running back is, as a young guy, if he's not knowledgeable of, the pass protections and the checks and the audibles, or if, say, he just straight up his technique is off and he just misses a guy or whiffs, that can become a real problem. So I think Wink Martindale will test the running back's ability to pass protection. Why wouldn't you throw that out there? You have to early on see if those running backs can protect, because Texas doesn't necessarily have a running game to lean on. They're going to be pretty one-dimensional in this game. Now, you can have things that are extension of the run game, like the screen game, the quick, short, high percentage passes. But ultimately, you got to win this game, I believe, one-dimensional, in a one-dimensional fashion. Because we know you haven't had a great run game. This is one of the best rush defenses in the country, top 15. You're not playing at home, and your running back room is depleted. Not a lot of reason to think ultimately, now. If it was a rival like Oklahoma or against A&M, and it was Trey Wisner, then maybe I'd say, hey, there's a chance Texas could have a really good showing in the run game. Right now, I don't think you can trust that. So I'm going to say you really got to make sure you are buttoned up in pass pro, specifically with the running backs, because I think this blitz-happy Michigan team is going to test it. And I would, too, if I was Wink Martindale. And that may force Sark to keep in tight ends more in the passing game and then go with more, max protection route concepts downfield. That also could be problematic because then Michigan kind of wins the numbers game on the back end. But if they're blitzing, depending on how aggressively they're blitzing, maybe you get one-on-ones on the back end and you get enough time in max protection to hit some of those shots downfield on the DBs. I do kind of like the defensive backfield, but I think there are some places Texas can exploit those DBs. We'll talk about that too here, because I think overall I like their DBs. They had 20 different players, I believe, have a PBU or an interception. They got 13 interceptions, 11 by 11 different players. So it shows you a lot of guys get in on it. I think ultimately, Brandon Hillman, their safety's a good player. Zeke Berry, guy makes plays on the ball. You guys know my rule. I need a DB that makes plays on the ball. Brandon Hillman, Barry does that for them, makes plays on the ball. Hill, another cornerback for them. Barry's a cornerback. He makes plays on the ball. If I'm going to target some guys, not talking trash saying these guys are weak or anything, but I do think there's a path of least resistance. I would probably go after Curtis, safety, averaging 9.7 yards per target when they throw at him. About a 53% completion rate against him, Mason Curtis, but he's only got a 7% forced incompletion rate. So he doesn't make a lot of plays on the ball. Those are the guys that I would go after and attack. Jaden Sanders is the guy. Like I said, I think he's pretty solid, but only a 4% incompletion rate forced and 70% completion rate allowed. That's another guy I think Texas could target. Metcalf also in the backfield for there. He's a safety for them, ends up in coverage a lot of times. He allows a 70% completion percentage, only 3% forced incompletion rate. So guys who are not making a ton of plays on the ball, so it's a less risky proposition to target those guys or to try to attack those guys. So that's, I think, for Texas, ultimately, you're going to be a one-dimensional team in this game. You'll have the legs of Arch Manning, but if you haven't been able to run the football effectively all season long or consistently, now with the depletion of the running back room, I don't all of a sudden see them drinking Red Bull and growing wings overnight. So you got to win it with Arch, which they can do on the back of Arch, but it's got to be a really sound game plan that diversifies the offense without necessarily having a second dimension with the run game. So how do you win a game? Basically being a one-dimensional team. You can diversify the offense. There's a lot of screen game. Sark loves, reverses, in and arounds. By wide receivers, you can throw out different personnel groupings and be diverse in your personnel groupings and your presentations that way too. A lot of the quick game. Sark loves the RPOs. RPOs should be a big part of it. But you can diversify the offense, still being a team that can, and not saying you're going to abandon the run game. You can still run it, but I don't know if you're going to run it successfully for that to end up being, basically a reason you can build the offensive game plan around that run game. I don't know if you're basically going to keep them honest with the run game, in my opinion, just to balance out the offense. All right, let's jump to the other side of the ball, because we talked about Michigan, their identity. They run the football really well, and they stop the run. Talked about them being a top 15 rush defense. Well, they're top, if you go actually 13th in rush defense, but you look at them, they're 15th in rushing offense, 213 rushing yards per game. And the explosive runs is what stands out to you about Michigan's run game. They got 23 20-plus yard runs on the season. That's 22nd in all of college football. They got 8 50-plus yard runs. That leads all the FBS. 6 of those end up being touchdowns. 8 50-plus yard runs. So what they count on a lot of the times, they add extra gaps in the run game, more multi-tight end sets, multi-back sets, and they're going to add an extra gap in the run game, and they really do a really good job of just getting push up front. Now they have one of the best, what's say, running back tandems. It's not a tandem anymore because Justice Haynes is not going to play. He's hurt, but he was a really good. He was almost at 1,000 yards. I think he had like a 900 something yards or 800 something yards. Jordan Marshall took over for him. He's starting running back. He's got 932 yards. So they got like an 800-yard runner. Ended up getting hurt. He's not going to play, or at least the reports indicate he's not going to play. And they got a 932-yard rusher. He's averaging over 6 yards per rush. And he's a GoDaddy, as Coach Shipley would say. He's a guy that can really break some of those explosive runs, and that's what stands out. So you got to make sure your run fits and your gap integrity are top of mind and prioritized this week if you're Texas. Gap control, making sure the guys are gaps out, and without some of your veterans in that front now with no Anthony Hill, no Trey Moore as well on that front. The communication that you had, the central nervous system of communication with Michael Taft as well on that back end. I worry about like busted coverages and missed assignments. Right? I like what we love what we've seen from Ty Anthony Smith. I think Brad Spence and Ty Anthony Smith I assume will probably be your starting linebackers in that game, but I don't know for sure. I assume those will be the guys. You know, they use Brad Spence in a lot of different roles as a hybrid guy. I think he's a guy that played linebacker in the SEC. So uh, I think he would get the first nod from me. And I think if you're looking at and thank God you didn't have much attrition at the D tackle position in terms of, guys who are not available and going to opt out or not available for you in this game, because we know Hero Canoe decided to come back. So you got Hero Canoe, Alex January, Murad Watts is another guy. Justice Terry is another guy that should be getting a lot of run in this game as well. So it's good you got, 4 D tackles that you trust, that have played, that you can rotate. It's just maybe one of those games for that 3D tackle package. When they have 3D tackle package, they go 3D tackles. Sometimes they run it from a 40 personnel with only 4 DBs on the field. Sometimes you'll see them run it with their nickel. I've seen them run it with like a penny front at times. But you're going to need to, not stack the box all the time, but you need to make sure that you are showing a kind of a heavier front defensively versus the run. And so you might see Texas in 40 personnel, because I would dare Michigan to throw the football. We'll talk about why that's the case too, because that's out of their comfort zone. They want to run the rock. They want to stay ahead of the chains. And so the good thing is Texas, like I said, has I think a rotation of D tackles that I think should give you a good starting point. But Brad Spence and Ty Smith, those guys got to show up for you have the games. I think on the edges, Lance Jackson would probably get the nod from me with Colin Simmons. I said that with those 3D tackles, and then Colin Simmons and Lance Jackson overhang on the edge. Then Ty Anthony Smith and Brad Spence also up there. You kind of run your 3-4 from a 40 personnel. Sometimes they turn into a penny front where it's 3 down linemen, maybe 3 D tackles with 2 overhang linebackers, outside linebackers, a land or edge defenders, I should say, Lance Jackson and a Colin Simmons. And then you have your 2 off-ball linebackers or inside linebackers, I should say. So I've seen, Texas do it in many different ways in terms of how they want to, kind of show a heavy front to stop the run. And they did it against Michigan in 2024 too. And I think with Johnny Nansen not calling the plays, you could see a lot of different looks with the front to try to load the box or at least match their numbers in the box to make sure you got every gap accounted for. So that's what and one of the things I'll throw out there too, since we're talking about the Texas defense versus that offense, they said they don't throw the ball very well. Here's a great number about their passing game. Bryce Underwood got 9 touchdowns, 6 interceptions on the season. So not spectacular. 28 drops. 28 drops by these Michigan receivers, period. Overall. I didn't just say wide receivers, overall 28 drops. That's a ton of drops for your for your quarterback. So they're not necessarily doing him any favors either. But yeah, Bryce Underwood, 61% completion percentage, which is really good for a young quarterback. So he's efficient, but they're not getting enough big plays in the passing game from him. But he is a guy that can run, averaging almost 8 yards per rush on scrambles. So you do have to worry about that. But I think that's the added element of infusing the +1 in the run game. If I'm Texas, I want him to try to beat me throwing the football, even though, all right, you got inexperience on the back end. Probably going to be a Kobe Black at one corner. Cade Phillips was making the push to that youth movement in the secondary. Grayson Littleton is also a freshman. I assume a Jonah Williams is going to get a lot of run at safety along with a Jelani McDonald. This is a really good game to have a Jelani McDonald. Let me just say that too. A Michigan team that wants to run the rock, and you can just roll that dude down. You can play your nickel and roll him down into the box and essentially be able to load the box with a force run defender. Even though you can just say play your nickel, whether that be your 4-2-5, however you want to do it. But I think you could just have him play linebacker for you. De facto linebacker for you. That's something to also consider. And this game, he gives you the ability to be really flexible versus a team that wants to run the ball and that wants to win the numbers game and win the the force game, right? We're talking about mass and girth up front. They want to win that advantage. And with Texas, Johnny McDonald, who at times, man, we've seen can take over a game and really do it through being a forced run defender, whether it be from depth or whether that be from him in the box. That's a guy that may end up being he may be the ace up your sleeve in this game. Colin Simmons is Colin Simmons, right? Talking about the guy that you say get your game record. But the guys that I think because of the matchup specifically, who may end up helping you really flip the odds in your favor could be a Lance Jackson. Guys you can move around. Lance Jackson, who can play multiple shades, a Justice Terry up front, who can play multiple shades up front and move around, and a guy like Jelani McDonald, who you can move around, bring him down into the box if I need to, drop him back if need be as well. You probably could play him on the edge a few times if you need to. So that's something to also consider when looking at this matchup. All right, that's enough. I won't rant too much about it, but I want to start at least touching on this matchup. Of course, we can start diving deeper and deeper into it as the week goes on. Before we end things today, let us thank our sponsor with a message from two legendary lifetime Longhorns, our friends over at Advanced Pain Care.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. And Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and Advanced Pain Care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced Pain Care. The pain stops here.
All right, thank you to our friends over at Advanced Pain Care. And I will say this, just kind of one more thing before we end things. If Texas wanted to continue with their aggressive mindset, which is playing their DBs more aggressive and not giving up easy completions for a quarterback like Bryce Underwood, who's not necessarily a very sophisticated passer, this also might be a good game for it. They don't necessarily have game breakers at receiver. Marsh is a good player. He's actually leading them, Andrew Marsh, in explosive plays, 16 on offense total. So he's explosive, got 641 yards receiving, averaging 15 yards per reception. And then there is Donovan McCulley, 534 yards receiving. But that's not their comfort zones in offense. It's not a sophisticated passing game. So if you can take away the easy, quick stuff and force Underwood to throw through tight windows, I think a guy who's that inexperienced, 9 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, could have some trouble. And keep this in mind, when Johnny Nansen last called plays, he'll be calling plays, of course, in this game as Texas transitions from PK to Muschamp. He had arguably the most exotic defense in the country in terms of the exotic looks and personnel groupings and personnel packages they would present. And remember, we had the Nansen influence when he came here because the NASCAR package and the dime package Texas broke out and the big nickel package they broke out, that was an influence on PK. So I don't know if he can help himself. He might be a guy that just likes the exotic, elaborate presentations and personnel groupings, and he just likes a lot of variety and flavor. Now, that may go against or may be counterproductive to a lot of young guys playing, young guys getting reps. You want them to play fast. You don't want them thinking a lot. So maybe this is something you only work in with the experienced group you have, the most experienced group you have out there on the field at one time. Maybe keep it simple when you have the younger guys out there. That's something to keep in mind. It ain't necessarily complex, but I would say exotic is more the word I would use. Maybe it is complex from the inside, but from the outside looking in, it's just more an exotic defense. I hope that's kind of what we see from Johnny Nansen. All right, there you go. That's my little preview of the Texas-Michigan game here on Sunday School. We'll be back next week with another edition. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, twisting and tweaking it out. Thanks to each and every one of you for out there for watching and for listening. And for Matthew and for our friends at Advanced Pain Care, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.